Shawn, I don't know if you've heard about the Batmobile litigation, but there's currently a case pending right now, both civil and criminal, over a Batmobile. There is a gentleman in California who wished to purchase a Batmobile replica, and there's a custom builder in Indiana that is actually building licensed Batmobiles. And so the two of these have ended up in a legal battle against each other. It's been very interesting. Been a number of news clips on it, particularly in the California news, because the California officers actually flew to Indiana to collect evidence for a potential, or actually a pending, California criminal case. I understand those criminal charges have been filed. The prosecutors are following up on it, and these California police officers actually went to Indiana to look at the Batmobile and collect records from the Batmobile company. This gives us, as business owners, business leaders, a lot of lessons about multi-jurisdictional, multi-state issues as we watch this Batmobile litigation unfold. So today, what I wanted to do is I've looked at the litigation. I'm going to bring in some facts here, stuff you may or may not have heard about the Batmobile litigation and cases, and we can really glean some lessons here for planning our businesses. And that's our goal here, is to really see what the Batmobile is teaching us that can be useful in our lives and our businesses. All right, folks, we'll talk about legal issues. Not legal advice. Consult your legal advisor. We're here just for education and entertainment, also not financial and investment advice. This should be an entertaining one because it's so unusual, but it also brings in a lot of issues. So what we have here is we have California and Indiana seem to be the two primary states. You've got a builder slash seller in Indiana, and then you've also got a purchaser in California. And so these two states are trying to figure out, and the legal systems in the two states are trying to figure out how to work together because they are separate states. And so originally there was some litigation originally filed in California, civil litigation, give me my money or give me my Batmobile, not criminal, not anybody's going to jail or getting a criminal record. That was the original thing. The California court, I understand, dismissed it, suggested they should go to Indiana for the civil litigation over the money. Meanwhile, the gentleman who was to receive the Batmobile in California went to the local California police. And what's really causing a lot of media attention is, in quite an unusual move, I don't know if you've called your local police, but I have, and I have friends, and they don't tend not like to get involved in things that are not, murders or, violent crimes, other things like that. They tend not to get involved in kind of these little property disputes or other things. They always say it's a civil matter, take it to court. But of course, there always are, in a lot of these civil matters, potential criminal charges that could be tied to it, right? If you take somebody's money for a Batmobile and you honestly just took the money and stole it rather than delivering the Batmobile, there's a number of crimes that could be attached to that. But usually they'll, rather than get into all the weeds and details, the police department just says, hey, go to court. Court will give you your money back. We're not going to get involved in it. Now, if there's a pattern of crime, if there's other factors involved, then we might see the police get involved. But here we got multi-state issues, right? We got California, Indiana battling it out, trying to figure out what happens here. And we'll talk about what we learned on some of that. What's interesting in our system, and those of you who see my other channels where I talk a little bit more about political stuff sometimes, know that, and if you're interested in that, drop a comment and I'll give you some links. But I talk a lot about federalism and this federal constitution and balancing of powers between the state and the federal government. There's a lot of challenges on the legislative side to federalism, right? What belongs where, what belongs state, what belongs federal. And it's been a constant piece of debate. State courts generally do respect federalism. Courts in each state, by and large, on many of the cases, they respect that they are in separate lanes, parallel lanes, but separate lanes. And California, recognized that Indiana is involved in this case, and they said, "Hey, take it to Indiana, right? The Batmobile parts are in Indiana. The manufacturers in Indiana." Having not read the opinion for how it's decided, but these are factors the court takes into account when determining whether they should have jurisdiction or the other state should have jurisdiction. And you can see California said that. A great channel here on YouTube, and he covered the Batmobile at least twice. Then go to the judge in California. They get these warrants and other things to get information about the Batmobile. They get on a plane at taxpayer expense to fly from California to Indiana. That's where we had overtime, etc. So a lot of expense to the California taxpayer to potentially recover this here. But what we had is the court systems were working together. The California court issued the warrant. The California warrant doesn't necessarily the Indiana court and said, "Hey, we got a warrant." The approval. And you'll see the same thing in civil litigation sometimes. If you need to do a subpoena or deposition or other activities pursuant to a civil case in a different state, sometimes you need to then involve the courts of that other state. And we've seen that. I've seen that in my practice in the law firms I work at, where we've had that situation where litigation going in one state, you have somebody who potentially is a witness or has information and records in a different state, and you've got to get that different state's court to order the records to be produced. So there is a strong notion of federalism still in the court system, and it often does play out as we're working through business and business litigation, that we need to look at how this federal system works, and we've got to then jump through different hoops. But the state courts, by and large, they understand that their jurisdiction is that state. There are ways they can work together, right, where they do these orders for each other out of state. There are issues with judgments in different states, etc. There are intersections where they work together and respect each other's judgments. But for the most part, every state is very understanding that their jurisdiction is their state, and they have to work through a lot of issues related to federalism. So that working together is very common. In this case, with the Batmobile, and I have not seen the contract for the Batmobile, but contract provisions could have fixed this, and this is probably something that will be considered in the future. This fact that we had this multi-state litigation going on there. Often when you write a contract, you have a choice of venue, choice of jurisdiction clause. So, if you're the manufacturer in Indiana, you would probably say, "Hey, let's have this hearing in Indiana," because that just makes it makes it convenient for you, gives you one central base of operations. The other thing that may have been considered, had this been a developed contract, and I understand the Batmobile developer has been out there, and feel free to reach out to me if you're out there and you want to talk, and I can possibly do a video clarifying. But you would have a contract that would say where you're going to litigate, but you also potentially have an arbitration clause. And that arbitration clause would say, "Hey, let's not take this to the court system. Let's go to an arbitration." lot of pluses and minuses to arbitration. A lot of folks will tell you they're a lot more expensive than you thought. Folks used to do arbitrations to avoid going to the court, and they thought it would avoid costs. But arbitrations are expensive too. A lot of lawyers will tell you an arbitration cost can be just as high as litigation. Regardless of cost, arbitration is generally private. These folks could have fought about the Batmobile, at least until the police got involved, privately, right? They could have had this spat about who owed who, how much money about the building of the Batmobile in private by using an arbitration provision. And they could have set the location of the arbitration too. So I don't know where in Indiana the Batmobile developer is, but he could have said, my town, Indiana, will have an arbitration, right? So then the California guy would have had to get on the plane, come to my town, Indiana, and they would have then had a fight over it there. Which brings up another interesting aside right now. There's this also pending in Indiana. There is litigation going with an IndyCar driver, Alex Palou, and the team he drives for, and they're fighting over whether he needs to drive for them in 2023. Very interesting litigation. But I bring it up in this case because there again, we haven't seen that contract either, but they're now in the court system airing their dirty laundry, and people are picking up the court filings and starting to analyze them, right? This is generally what you don't want in high-profile situations. I think the Batmobile builder, from all we can see, he's being very professional about this. He's being very open. He'll probably gain business from this. He won't get hurt with this the way you normally would. But normally, if you're a company, you don't want these things out there to confuse people and sully your reputation, right? Even an incorrect allegation about this Batmobile would potentially lead to a loss of business, loss of reputation, which is why you often would prefer arbitration. You've got to balance that, but interesting. And then, like I say, with this IndyCar litigation, Alex Palou out there in the court, which tells me, and I expressed this opinion on David Land's YouTube video, excellent YouTube video about it. He was analyzing the removal provision, because that's another piece of this. When you get this multi-state litigation, you have diversity of citizenships. The parties that are suing each other are residents of different states. You can potentially remove the federal court. It's a procedural thing. It's a tactic that is given to the defense in the lawsuit. You can't read too much into that, but they're reading the tea leaves over at David Land's page. And one thing I said in a comment was, they probably have not put this, somehow this is outside the contract, because I'm imagining a good, well-written contract between a high-dollar IndyCar race team and an IndyCar driver had an arbitration provision. So this should have been a private arbitration. Yet somehow this ended up in litigation, which means that this is somehow probably something that's not in the contract itself. Just my theory. But the point is, good contracts fix this, right? It fixes things with the Batmobile. It's going to fix things with the IndyCar driver. Get those contracts well set up, thought through, and built. We can learn a lot for our businesses from this multi-state litigation. You can see how quickly this gets complex. The involvement of the criminal authorities is quite unusual. So I wouldn't give... it's a consideration, but I wouldn't give undue weight to it. It's rather unusual. I'd be more concerned in contracts about the civil side of things. Obviously, you want your house in order. You don't want to be violating criminal laws. But get your house in order. Get solid contracts. Understand how those contracts are going to work. Use those contracts as part of your business, and you can avoid a lot of these issues. And a good lawyer can help you walk through these multi-state issues. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you subscribe, ring the bell for notifications so you get more of these videos about business and law. And hope you ring the bell so you get the notifications. Give me a like so more people can see this video. But most importantly, join me in the comments about what you think about this and this litigation. I'll see you down there in the comments. Catch you soon.